Here we go. What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. And we are all coming to you guys after game one of the playoffs. The Cavs pulled off another victory, 121-100. Of course, their first victory in the playoffs, but another win when it comes to this season. Chris, how many playoffs is this for you? Your tenure at cleveland.com has been long. It has been great. It's been filled with postseason runs when it comes to the Cavs. Does the atmosphere in Rocket Arena continue to match what you've been with in the past?
Are you calling me old, Ethan? Is that a veiled shot
No,
at my grayness?
never
Is
that.
that what it
Never
is?
that.
I don't know. I've lost track. Um, it has been a lot of playoff runs for me, and this one feels like one that could extend into June for sure. And the atmosphere at Rocket Arena was up there. I was actually talking to one of the players in the locker room after the game, and we were talking about some of the most hostile environments that they've ever been in, some of the loudest environments that they've ever been in. And I brought up Oracle Arena, I brought up Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, I brought up Madison Square Garden. He agreed with that from 2 years ago. But Cleveland tonight, it's game one, and it's 1 versus 8. So I don't think this is going to be a competitive series. I don't think this is going to be a long series. I don't think this is a series that anybody has to have any kind of trepidation about. It's game one. It's Sunday evening. It's Easter, for Christ's sake. And it was buzzing in that building. The fans were great. They were wearing their white. They were swinging the rally towels around. So it was a really, really good environment. And you could tell that the Cavs were feeding off of that. And you could tell that, Donovan Mitchell was encouraging them more as the game went on. And Darius Garland was doing the same. And the same thing when it comes to Ty Jerome. The thing that you can say about Cleveland sports fans, man, they love their teams. They're going to go all out for their teams, and they're going to take pride in the fact that they can make whatever arena it is, they can make it a proverbial dungeon for the opponent. And I felt like it was tonight. So kudos to everybody.
Ashley and Jimmy, I know you guys have been around as well. What is this team in general stand for you guys? And you guys have covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, and also just being in Rocket Arena. It felt to me a little bit like this team and this arena, this fan base, as Chris was mentioning, has a vibe that they know that this could be a long run.
Well, as Chris was talking, I think I counted it up for you, Chris. I think this is your eighth postseason, but seventh if you don't count the play-in year. So I think we don't count the play-in year.
No, we
And I
don't.
think, yeah, so it's your seventh postseason series. And I think for me too, it's like my sixth because I was around as a stringer, not working for cleveland.com or no, it's my fifth for 3 of the 4 LeBron years. So in terms of where it ranks, it's interesting because to me, this just feels, to Chris's larger point, the most hype that has been around this team since those LeBron years. Because I think last year, we all know that Orlando series that they opened with was sort of a pick 'em, and then they have all these injuries in the final series, that what ended up being the final series, the second round series there. The year before that, obviously, they get beat up by the Knicks. So it feels different, but I feel like it still doesn't even come close to what it's going to be like if this team makes a run to the finals, or even if they get to the conference finals, right? I feel like Cleveland fans are going to have a lot more to give, even though there was so much hype tonight. And I had to break out earplugs for the first time this season. I had to break out the Loop earplugs that I bought specifically to go to the Eras Tour 2 years ago. So that's how you know it was loud in there.
Jimmy, we can't hear you, buddy, but we're gonna keep going.
Mhm.
We're gonna keep rolling here.
To Ashley's point, though, I think it makes sense, right? Because I think fans understand that this is a special group. And I think fans understand that this group is capable of winning a championship. Are they going to? We're just going to have to follow along and see. But when you're a fan base and your team has a chance to do something special, you can feel that, you can sense that. And to Ashley's point, last year, it just felt like the Cavs were flawed. And it wasn't a situation where, because of the way that they finished the season, they were going the wrong direction and they weren't building momentum, but it felt like there was something missing with that team. You saw them play against Orlando, and you're like, oh my God, they are struggling to score the basketball. Oh my God, offense is a chore. Oh my God, like, are they going to be able to do this? You know what I mean? Like, you get a sense very, very quickly about what a team can do and what a team can't do. And I totally understand that there are legitimate questions about the Cavs and the playoffs in translating regular success to the playoffs. That was the big question coming into this playoff run for the Cavs. What they did in the regular season, great, 64 wins, number one offense, one of the best offenses in NBA history. But what does it look like when you get into the playoffs? In saying all of that, you can still sense something special with this group. And I think it's a likable group. I think the fan base understands that these guys are capable in a way that last year's Cavs were not. And 2 years ago, those Cavs were flawed too.
I think I've just been sitting here
There you are.
throwing zingers to myself in the living room. You guys have been missing out. I had a great Ashley headphones joke about like, haha, this is also the first day that Ashley and I sat next to each other on press row. Maybe that's why she brought the headphones. I was really yucking up. I love Chris's for Christ's sake, it's Easter, or it's Easter for Christ's sake. Like, come on the third day the Lord said it's Easter for Christ's sake.
That was like a dad joke, but it was a bar.
Yeah, I liked it. No, it's more of like work that into a story. I like it. As for the basketball, I think Chris is hitting the nail on the head. To me, the whole Cavs playoff narrative has been misguided for years. We've talked about this on the pod several times, but it's like the Knicks series, while it was an exercise in physicality and rebounding, is a defense issue. The Magic series, again, very physical, hard-hitting series, rebounding wild swings. We could talk about how the Cavs managed their emotions or didn't do it very well on the road in that series. At the end of the day, couldn't score very well. That's when they struggled. That's why. Now they have the best offense in the league, and I understand why fans had some trepidation about, is that going to translate? We've been hurt before, that kind of thing. It translated. The best offense in the league. They like the best offense in the league. They played in the Heat. By the way, the Heat aren't great at a lot of things, and their lack of offense can hurt their defense sometimes, because when you have bad possessions, it can feed in the Cavs' transition game where they are lethal. But this is a top 10 defense. The Cavs mostly carved it up during the regular season. They averaged like 117, 118 points against in the regular season. They dropped 120 tonight. So it's here. Ty Jerome, 16-game player. Darius Garland looks a lot like the Darius Garland we've been expecting in the playoffs for a couple of years. We could talk about maybe not the most exciting Evan Mobley game. You have questions about that. Isaac Okoro didn't shoot well. A lot going on, but the big overarching takeaway is, oh yeah, that's the team that went 56-10, right? That was them.
Last year, they played 48 quarters of playoff basketball, 48 of them. You know how many times they scored 30 points in a quarter? 10. Total. 10. They did it 3 times in game 1 tonight. And they made it look easy against, like Jimmy said, a top 10 defense in the NBA. So this team just has more firepower. This team has more diversity within the offense. This team has more optionality. Evan Mobley was punishing switches. That was a big deal, and I think that's going to be a big deal moving forward. So I know Kenny Atkinson kind of downplayed this performance, and he was like, it wasn't our best performance. It trailed for 35 freaking seconds. And the game did not feel like it was in jeopardy at all in the second half. As close as Miami got was 6. It was 7 around the 8-minute mark of the fourth quarter. And then the Cavs finished the game on a 26-12 run. Like, that's what this team has shown all throughout the regular season. And it certainly translated into game 1 of the playoffs.
And I think it's also important to note that, like, while Jimmy was mentioning the offensive production of Evan Mobley and Jared Allen not necessarily being there, well, it not necessarily has to be when 3 guards combine to score 85 points, right? That's not necessarily their job in those scenarios. Their job is to get the offensive rebounds and kick it back out and give them more opportunities, which is what those two did, even though Evan Mobley did not have a single rebound in the first half. He ended the game with 7, 3 offensive boards and 4 defensive rebounds. Jared Allen had 6 offensive boards, 5 defensive rebounds for a total of 11. They combined for 21 points between the two of them. So I think it's important to note that everybody kind of played their role in game 1. And to me, guys, it's not the offense that stands out. And I think we could talk about the offense all day, but it's the defensive mentality that the Cavs had to be able to stifle the Miami Heat offense. Even when Tyler Hero was having it going at points, even when Bam Adebayo went on a run, they found ways to stifle them and get into them and find ways to just put them off their game, whether it was Donovan Mitchell fighting for balls, fighting for loose balls, Darius Garland fighting for rebounds, and all these different things. It felt like the roles that continued to be played, Sam Merrill on the defensive end, Isaac Okoro, even though he missed 4 3-pointers, his defensive presence. We can continue to go into the defense because I feel like that and the rebounding aspect were 2 of the things that we had major questions about coming into game 1 and how they would react and respond to a Miami Heat team that we know is physical and we know can get on the boards.
I think this is an ominous sign for Miami. The Cavs were off for a week. Miami shot 49% from the field and 41% from 3-point range. It felt like through the most of the game, it felt like they were shooting over their heads. Some of the shots that they were making were ridiculous. Some of the shots that were made came from people that the Cavs were probably okay taking those shots. So I don't know how much of the shooting performance of Miami tonight in game 1 is going to be one that they can duplicate as this series progresses, especially against the Cavs defense. And that was a big storyline coming into this series. The Cavs are going to score. The Cavs have the best offense in the end. Can Miami keep up? Can Miami score enough? They like playing games in the low 90s. They like playing games that don't get to 115, 120. That's where the Cavs are capable of getting to. Miami doesn't have a ton of offensive firepower. And I just think when they shoot 49% from the field and 41% from 3-point range, and barely crack the 100-point mark, they do it right on the nose. That is an ominous sign for the Heat because I just don't know how much of what they got from certain guys in this game. I don't know how much of that they can count on as the series continues to progress. So I think my big takeaway is that they are going to continue to struggle to score the ball consistently, especially against the Cavs defense, which was more focused, which was more feisty, which was more physical at the point of attack. It started with Max Strus picking up Tyler Hero 94 feet away, but Donovan Mitchell picking up his guy at the half-court line, getting into the crouch, Darius Garland battling on switches and all that kind of stuff. It was just a different feeling defense for the Cavs than what we saw for a majority of the second half of the season. And it's like, no duh, because they didn't really care about those games in the second half of the season. But if the Cavs are going to play to that level defensively, and Miami already has problems where they look completely constipated on the offensive end of the floor as it is, now you mix that in with this version of the Cavs defense, I just don't know how they're going to consistently score well enough to be able to keep these games competitive against the Cavs.
To go back to Ethan's original point, because I thought both Jared Allen and Evan Mobley were so important to this defense today. I mean, obviously, always, right? Like, just copy and paste what I said and schedule it to be sent at midnight after the game 2 on Wednesday, and so on and so on and so on throughout the series. But you look at their stat lines, they certainly weren't eye-popping. And Kenny Atkinson was the first one to say, well, yeah, those guys had to worry about Bam Adebayo, the Olympian, the 3-time All-Star on the other end of the court. And yes, Bam finished with 24 on 10 of 22 shooting and had 9 rebounds. But this is a guy who can make your life so much worse. And I do think, like, if the Heat are going to steal a game, it's going to be because Bam has an amazing game somewhere along the line. We know what Tyler Hero is going to do, but I really think he's the key in so many ways. And he's a guy who Evan Mobley for years has studied because there are so many similarities in their games. And I think you see it in a game like tonight. And even when Evan's not grabbing rebounds early, right? He obviously got back into the swing of things there. But in the fourth quarter, even Eric Spoelstra talked about how disruptive he was, and even just batting balls out that made it so the Heat weren't able to get offensive rebounds or batting them out, back out to Cavs players, making them fight, make them expend more energy. Jared Allen talked about he felt like they made Bam work for everything he got today. I think they did from watching. And I think that's really important when you remember, to Chris's point, the Cavs come into this having a week off, and the Heat just had to grind through 2 play-in games already. You want to make them work for everything. And I think they did that tonight. And I think even though Evan and Jarrett's stat lines aren't eye-popping, like, and 2, those guys are fine with the guards, 3 guards dropping 27 plus. Like, they'll take that.
And I'm taking 15 shots too. I'm not really concerned about like the Evan Mobley scoring output, the Jared Allen scoring output. I will say though, like Evan Mobley's just got to get more than 4 defensive rebounds in 33 minutes. 0 rebounds in the first half. That just ain't going to do it. He had the same amount of defensive rebounds as Ty Jerome, and we'll throw the Ty Jerome parade at some point on this podcast. But like, that's just it's one game. But we just spent a week talking with Kenny about like the next big thing for Evan Mobley is the thing that separates him from all the all-time great players is, can you play with that extra bit of verve, force, aggression? And it's like that just wasn't there. We saw passive Evan Mobley tonight. Now it's true that it can be hard to summon that when you're not as involved on the offensive end. There's a reason that a lot of coaches scheme up a touch for their big on like the first possession of every game because they want them to feel involved and that'll get the motor going. And by the way, the Cavs did do this. Evan had 7 points in the first quarter. There's clearly a concerted effort to get him the ball right out of the second half. They gave him the ball again. He scored again. But like, there's going to be hopefully for the Cavs, if all is going well, there's going to be a lot of nights where Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Ty Jerome are very involved on the ball. And you have to find that balance between making your own momentum and drawing from other people. Like the other thing about Evan Mobley is like he was grabbing rebounds and pushing. Well, he didn't grab very many rebounds, but when he did grab some rebounds, he was dribbling up the court and pushing. But when you're a player of his caliber and they have the kind of expectations on him that the Cavs put on him, sometimes you just got to create your own offense too. And that's put yourself in a rhythm. So I'll say that again, not really that concerned about the big picture. This is a 20+ point win. Just wanted to point that out. I'm also like the Cavs defense was good tonight, but like the Miami Heat offense gonna defend itself a little bit sometimes, right? Like I think particularly it's really tough. I know that some of their best moments this year have come with the 2 big lineup, Khalil Ware and Bam Adebayo, but like, man, it already feels like they're playing with a hand behind their back at times on offense. Cramping your spacing ain't helping. Yeah. Letting 2 of the best rim protectors in the NBA kind of hang in the paint. It's not helping. And to Chris's point, I do think Tyler Hero missed a couple of good looks. I do think it's fair to expect for Bam to have a game or two that looks better than this, just by virtue he's very talented. Even if he takes the same exact shots, he might make a few more. But like the Miami Heat don't score. That's kind of who they are. So as much as I also appreciate, Darius Garland bodying up in the post and taking the challenge defense, I thought he had some really good possessions against Tyler Hero. Sam Merrill, 6 most minutes on the team. Whoa. That's a big vote of confidence from Kenny. Both he was getting the Tyler Hero assignment a decent amount of the time tonight too. That's a very interesting story to watch going forward. But I really just think this is a game about the offense. It's not like I don't think we had a ton of questions about the offense come in, like we, the four of us. But again, to see the proof of concept, to see the best offense in the league work on a playoff level against the best thing that the Heat do, which is guard the ball, that is what will stick with me about this game and Ty Jerome.
Alrighty, and I want to just give a little bit of background to what the point that Jimmy was making about Khalil Ware and Bam Adebayo. Like, I think the Cavs, when I walked in the shoot around today ahead of the game one, the Cavs trainer / assistant coach had a shirt on with like a face of Khalil Ware taped to it as they were literally running through drills, trying to imitate Khalil Ware in actions and putting him into different things that the Cavs were able to exploit, not only today, but hope to exploit throughout the remainder of the series. And I think it's important to think and just see how the Cavs are literally trying to implement all these different things, even for players like Ware, who in very different circumstances might get more minutes, but tonight he just had 19 and a half, right? So I think it's important to note that the Cavs are game planning and looking at different areas on every spectrum where they can take advantage, whether that's in the two big lineup, one big lineup. We've had those discussions on this podcast at length, but I think it's important how everybody is trying to play their role and trying to find their niche for each individual game. And as Kenny Atkinson said, it was the Ty Jerome game tonight. It could be the Sam Merrill game on Wednesday. It could be the DeAndre Hunter game on Wednesday. Who knows, right? But tonight, it was the three guards, Donovan Mitchell, Ty Jerome, and Darius Garland, for the first time in NBA playoff game history for the Cavs. It was the first time that three Cavs players scored 27 points or more. And I know Jimmy talked about wanting to do the Ty Jerome parade, but I'm going to start with Donovan Mitchell as the leader of this group. He scored 30 points in game one in 7 straight series in the playoffs, tying Michael Jordan for the longest such streak in NBA history. Michael Jordan did it twice. That 7-game streak where he had game ones of 30 plus or more, that streak, Donovan is the second person ever to do that. Kobe Bryant has 6. Michael Jordan also has 6. Wilt Chamberlain has 6. So I think, of course, that was the expectation, though, of Donovan Mitchell. And my biggest thing is the difference between him this year and him last year, right? We talked a lot last year, Chris, about how he wasn't able to drive to the basket because he was still working with that achy knee. This year, he is not. He looks healthy. He looks ready to go. That ankle looks fine. He's been able to drive to the basket. And when he was 0 of 6 to start the game from beyond the arc, he was still able to attack the basket and get whatever he wants, it felt like, on the interior and against guys that I don't think anybody on Miami has someone defensively that they feel comfortable and confident putting on Donovan and saying, oh, yeah, he can get a stop whenever he wants to.
Yeah, I think Miami's going to have consistent problems trying to defend the Cavs because they just don't have the personnel to deal with all the different play creators and ball handlers that the Cavs have. Davion Mitchell is really, really pesky. He's a good on-ball defender, but there's only one of him. So if he's going to be on Donovan, okay, then Darius is going to have an advantage against Tyler Hero or against whoever, Alec Burks, whoever it may be. So I just don't know that they have the personnel to deal with the Cavs consistently throughout the course of a 48-minute game and throughout the course of this series. And even when Miami went to the zone, the first couple of possessions, the Cavs didn't score, but they got pretty good looks. I still don't know how DeAndre Hunter missed his layup at the end of the third quarter. But even Miami, when they went to the zone late in the third quarter, I'm surprised it took them that long to go to the zone. But they went to the zone late in the third quarter, and it carried over into the fourth quarter. The Cavs didn't look discombobulated. The Cavs didn't look confused. The Cavs looked pretty comfortable executing against that zone. So I just don't know what answers that the Heat are going to consistently find. And look, they're champions. They have champions on that roster. They're battle tested. They've got a lot of experience. They're prideful. They are a top 10 defense. But in this particular matchup, I just don't know what they're going to consistently go to try and keep Donovan out of the paint, or Darius out of the paint, or Ty Jerome out of the paint. Ty got to the paint at will tonight. So having those three guys that can operate so effectively in pick and roll situations, and then the Cavs having both bigs and Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, who are great in the pick and roll, it's going to be really, really hard for them to find solutions on the defensive end of the floor. And that's the problem when it comes to playing against the Cavs offense, is they have so many different ways to attack. They have so many different counters. You try and take one thing away, then they go to a next thing, and it can be just as effective. So it's going to be really, really difficult for any team throughout the course of these playoffs to deal with the Cavs offense. It's a historically great offense for a reason, but Miami in particular, I just don't think they have enough on-ball defense to keep these guys out of the paint. And for Donovan, kudos to him for recognizing that he had an advantage going to the basket, and he had some otherworldly finishes when he was going to the basket, but he doesn't have to be overly reliant on his three-point shot. He doesn't have to settle for shots against this Miami team, because he can beat a lot of these guys off the dribble, maybe every single one of them.
Important. I was thinking about the playoffs today, playoff performers, and I feel like a little bit to the Donovan stat about 7 straight 30-point game ones. I feel like Cavs fans have been a little spoiled with reliable playoff performance, just because you just counted on 20. We think Chris was counting a lot of playoff series. We're still just banking on LeBron 25-5-5 in the playoffs every night. Like, it needs to be acknowledged that what Donovan, that streak is very hard to accomplish. And maybe that the part where Michael Jordan's on the list with him, maybe that hits it home for you. But like, it should be noted that like LeBron James has had bad playoff series too. Like, well, one basically ever. But like Stephen Curry, these Mount Rushmore greats have had moments where the tension of the playoffs, or the physicality of the playoffs, or the level of competition in the playoffs is so great that they looked average, even below average at times. Now, important context. All of these 30-point games are in the first or second round. That just is what it is. Your level of competition is only so high in those situations. But the overarching point there is what Donovan's doing is really impressive. We should not take that for granted. And he was incredible tonight, finishing around the rim. The little, like, the Jordan switch hands kind of deal. He went right to left. Like, come on, man. That's gorgeous. And he was doing some like Kyrie spins. Some Kyrie spins off the glass, man. It was amazing. But okay, we're about to hit the half-hour mark here. I can't go 30 minutes talking about this game, not talk about Ty Jerome, man. Because as awesome as Donovan was, and as impressive as his streak is, the Cavs freaking basically closed the game with him on the bench.
Yep. Like,
closed the game out. Yep. And there was a moment there after Ty Jerome hit one of his many ridiculous pull-up threes tonight. Well, I think it might have been the last one, where I was just like, is Donovan going to come back in? like what's going on here?
Yeah.
What is happening? This guy, like, Ty Jerome has been such a fun, I mean, he's found money, right? So he's been such a fun player to follow the whole year, just because he said tonight, basically, he felt like this year was kind of his last chance to stick in the league. Like, that's where this guy felt like his career was slipping through his fingers. And so that starting point to begin with makes him a very easy figure to root for. The audaciousness with which he plays makes him a really, like, he's flexing on people. This guy made one shot to start the game, and he was like, yeah, you know what? Logo heat check. Let me throw this guy up there. Like, oh my God. That is so incredible. I was laughing at him from the start of the game. That had me going. And then by the end, we were laughing because, he wasn't wrong. He was just early. He knew he had it before we did, right? He was him being, I don't think, this is not a super smart guy take. I don't think Ty Jerome's going to score 28 a night on 24 minutes a game in the playoffs, but I'm feeling pretty good about him being a 16-game player right now. And that's a small sample size, but I think parts of this are like regular season Ty Jerome is sustainable in the playoffs. And that is a massive breakthrough for the Cavs.
Extremely small sample size, Jimmy.
Peyton
one game.
Somewhere JB Bickerstaff is in a Manhattan hotel preparing to face the New York Knicks with 90s emo music on, saying, why couldn't I have this guy? Like, why couldn't I have him in the playoffs when our offense looked constipated and we couldn't score 100 points? Why couldn't I have somebody else who could make plays and run pick and roll, my favorite set and stuff? So JB is swishing around some scotch, listening to emo music, wondering what could have been.
And I think it's Ty Jerome's swagger, right? And obviously I'm going to give you guys some more stats because that's just what I do. So, but before I do that, I think when you talk about Jimmy, the heat check that came in his second shot, it was after the Cavs went on this 15-4 run, and then they were like, oh, yeah, this is the offense that we've had. We're going to stomp them into the ground, and then they go into a timeout. Miami, Eric Spoelstra, one of the best, if not the best coach in the NBA right now, puts together an ATO. They end up going on a 10-2 run, and it's a 1-point game. And Kenny Atkinson goes, okay, starters, you had your time. Now we're going to get this bench unit in. And in comes Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill, and DeAndre Hunter. And it felt like the arena that had been going crazy for the first 3 minutes and 30 seconds exactly, I believe it was, when they were up 15-4, kind of closed their mouths and started holding their breath just slightly when the Cavs let Miami go on that little run. And when Ty Jerome came in and hit that shot, he kind of looked around before he hit his first celebration. Like, y'all seem stiff. I'm gonna inject some more confidence into everybody. And he hit his celebration, ran back, and then of course the next possession or very close afterwards, throws up a heat check. And we understand that's just how he's been since even dating back to training camp after playing just 2 games last year in the regular season. He came back in training camp, even before training camp, when they were going through voluntary workouts. He was talking smack to Darius Garland to the point where he was like, whoa there, buddy. You might want to pump the brakes. I'm still driving this wagon. And I think it's an understatement to say that Ty Jerome's, who is a smack talker by trait, confidence that is delusional by far, I think he is the guy that is going to continue to inject confidence, swagger, and just gall into this Cavs team whenever they need it. And it's funny because he only played 3 minutes in the third quarter, and then Kenny Atkinson again was like, hey, we kind of want to extend this 8-point lead that we keep having after every single quarter. Let's put Ty Jerome in there. And then he goes ahead and drops 16 points in the fourth quarter. So just before I let y'all continue, he became the 3rd player in Cavs history to score 28 or more points in his playoff debut, joining LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. He's also just the 4th NBA player since 1970.
How about that list? What a list. Great list.
He's also just the 4th NBA player since 1970-1971 to score 28 points or more off the bench in a playoff debut, joining Malik Monk, Ben Gordon, and Billy Ray Bates, dating back to 1980.
All right, not as great of a list there.
Still a great
list. Not all lists created equal.
Ashley, what do you think about Ty Jerome's performance and just how he's been able to use his attitude and his persona to help the Cavs this season.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of proves one of my favorite takes that I've ever come up with throughout all of professional sports, which is every professional athlete is a bit delusional. And like people normally laugh when I say that, but the point being, like, these guys don't get to where they are like 1 through 16 unless you are a little bit delusional. That's just like the odds they're dealing with. And I mean, especially like a guy like Ty Jerome, who's been a journeyman, who, Chris, I know your headline this week about out of the darkness and he's become a beacon of light. It's such a good metaphor for him. Like, he's gotten to this point because of that swagger and being a bit delusional about where he could fit in, right? And he's essentially, I think, like manifested it with this team. It's awesome to see. But without that attitude, like, I think you don't get the offensive production because you don't have somebody that has the confidence to then put up 16 points in the fourth quarter off the bench in a playoff game. So for me, I think that's really what it comes down to. Like, he's proving me right, so I like that. But I genuinely think like his whole persona is what has gotten him production this year.
Kyrie Irving's playoff debut performance, he scored 30. He scored 30 against Boston game 1 in 2015. Ty Jerome had 28. I mean, it was, I don't know how else you put it into words. I talked to his college roommate, DeAndre Hunter, in the locker room after the game briefly. And he's like, this is just who Ty is. I'm not surprised by this. I've seen this a million times. And I was like, hold on. Like, come on now. Like, I know you played alongside him at Virginia. You guys won a championship. But this is his playoff debut. This is the first time playing in the playoffs. Like, my God, for him to do this and just make Miami look answerless over and over and over again. I think the big thing is, there were points throughout the course of this regular season that members of the coaching staff, including Kenny Atkinson, were honestly wondering to themselves, how much can I play Ty in the playoffs? How much can I? Like, how much of what we're seeing here in this regular season is real? And how much can we actually play him in the playoffs? Because sometimes he doesn't make sense. He's not overly athletic. He's not the quickest dude. It feels like he could have problems defending pick and roll. The numbers are not friendly there when it comes to him as a pick and roll defender. And Kenny Atkinson was aware of all those things. So he was legitimately wondering to himself, how much can I play this dude in the playoffs? He basically closed the game with him because he couldn't take him off the floor. And that's Ty. Ty is the kind of guy who can go on these flammable runs where he just makes it really, really difficult to go away from him. He's done it his entire career. And Kenny Atkinson, it's gone from that conversation to, is Kenny going to have to find more minutes for him? And who are those minutes going to come at the expense of? They might come at the expense of DeAndre Hunter. They might come at the expense of Dean Wade to play a 3-guard lineup instead of a 3-big lineup. Obviously, every series is going to be different. Every matchup is going to be different. But how could anybody watch Ty play throughout the regular season when he was in the conversation for 6-man and game 1 tonight against Miami and say to themselves, like, how can he get something other than 25 to 28 minutes throughout the course of these playoffs? He is so impactful every time he takes the floor, and he just gives the Cavs a completely different dimension offensively to have another ball handler, another play creator, somebody else who can just dissect a defense in pick and roll situations.
I just did some quick math here. For the Ty Jerome's been doing this forever crowd. Ty Jerome, research, well, Don says it.
Yeah,
Don says it. All the players will say it. The players will say it. Ty will say it. Ty Jerome in his researchable career, we're talking college and pro, or tonight, or before this season, I should say, had 13 20-point games. Tonight was Ty Jerome's 14th 20-point game of the season. There's no – he's not doing it before. Even at Virginia, like I remember him at Virginia, he always felt like more the steady point, like the floater stuff, the run your offense stuff, like that I remember. 30-foot pull-ups, like as a normal thing, wasn't there. Don't think Tony Bennett was green-lighting those. Don't think he was green-lighting. Maybe Ty Jerome must have been a sick practice player early in his career if he could do this, if you have like a special guard that you have to prepare for or something like that. But it's like, this guy literally, like, okay, forget 28 points. I mean, don't forget 28 points. Remember it, cherish it forever. But, like, this dude was, like, legit controlling the pace of a playoff game in that fourth quarter. Like the game was revolving around Ty Jerome.
Yes, he was the epicenter of their offense.
He was the main character of the entire – it was crazy. We know he's really good. We know he's really good. But to Chris's point, like I was like, okay, but like when it's always like, it's like when you have a good rookie quarterback in the NFL, the league catches up to you. They'll figure him out. And by the way, did you see CJ Stroud this year? Had a great rookie year. A little bit of regression because the NFL defenses are really smart. Ty Jerome in the playoffs, fly by night, regular season game, tough guard. Maybe when Eric Spoelstra, one of the greatest coaches of a generation, has more time to scout him, maybe he won't be as good. Wrong. He's the best player on the court. I don't know how to process that.
When's the last time you think Ty Jerome saw a blitz from the defense?
They put two on the ball.
Two at him, and he just calmly snapped the pass like he was supposed to do. But they had no answers for him. That they blitzed him as if he was Jalen Brunson or Donovan Mitchell. The
Timberwolves been begging, like Anthony Edwards is starting to get it now. But like for the first 4 years of Anthony Edwards' career, number 1 overall pick, potential face of the NBA one day, the Timberwolves are begging him to manage a trap that way. Just get rid of the ball. Ty Jerome, first time he's seen it in who knows how long. Yeah, just make the right play.
And I think it goes back to this morning, right? Ty Jerome and Chris, you've said this on the podcast before that you were not worried about Ty in his first playoff appearance, in his first playoff scenario, atmosphere, environment in the NBA. And Ty kind of stood on that. And I'm just going to read you guys what he said this morning. Then he brought it to fruition. He said, at shoot-around, it's the same people trying to stop you from scoring the ball. Same people you're guarding. Obviously, the game is going to be more physical and more intensified. That may take a second to get used to, but at the end of the day, it's basketball. And I think when you're a real competitor, you live for games like this. So obviously, it'll be a different environment. Our fans are some of the best fans in the league, and we can't wait to see what they bring tonight. But other than that, I live for games like this, series like this, and I can't wait to play. And I'm sorry, but you say that and then you go and do it. Those are two different things. Like, it's the walk of life. And Max Strus, after the game, said Ty Jerome is built for games like this, built for the moment. So it's not just talk, it's walking it and backing it up. Go ahead, Jimmy. I know you wanted to hop in.
I'm just going to say real quick, you know what happens to most guys who say that about the playoffs? They get exposed because they don't understand how the playoffs work. When I heard Ty Jerome say that this morning, I was like, I don't know if this is going to go the way you think it's going to go, buddy. Just a casual best player on the court, 28 points in 24 minutes. It doesn't make any sense, but he's so good. He's so good. I'm not like, it just doesn't make any sense for someone in their first playoff game against this kind of coach. I understand that the Heat are not uber talented, but they do guard the ball well. And at a certain point, they did shift. They're like, this guy, we have to shift our defense to it. Didn't matter. It didn't matter. He's so good.
Now that we've gone 15 minutes into the Ty Jerome celebration after Jimmy had
not long enough, by the way.
It should have been 45 minutes of Ty.
That's right.
It could have been the entire podcast. But I think we also have to look to probably the other guard that had the biggest eyes on him, which is Darius Garland, who's trying to rewrite the narrative about him in the playoffs. Ashley, I know we've talked about this on the podcast. His maturity is a big thing. His defense is a big thing. Obviously, him scoring the basketball is huge. He had 27 points. He played great defense. We talked about him walling up against Bam Adebayo. We talked about him being at the point of attack against Tyler Hero, Davion Mitchell. There have been multiple different aspects of the game where Darius has grown. But the biggest one that Kenny Atkinson mentioned, and he said that this team, if Darius Garland plays with this, is nearly unbeatable, is the maturity aspect of his game, the way that he was able to handle being hit, being attacked, not getting every call that he might have wanted, and still putting his head down and going to work and doing what the team needed from him.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before too. I think in years past, like Darius just hasn't been that even keeled. I know Chris has brought up the Orlando series last year as one example of that. I think he just, his personality, who he is as a player, he tends to wear all emotions, good or bad, on his sleeve, like particularly frustration. And this might be like the quietest 27-point playoff performance that I can remember in a while, just because I think by nature of the story, Jerome kind of usurps what he did. And then Donovan having 30, and I thought Donovan, the intangible things he did too, just kind of usurped what Darius did. But those 27 points mattered a whole heck of a lot. The fact that he did it on 10 of 17 shooting, only 2 turnovers, only 2 fouls, 1 steal, 5 assists. Like, this wasn't even peak Darius to me yet, just from the assist numbers alone. But I think you do see that maturity. I know the phrase that Kenny's been using for days is we need him to look 28, not 25. I laugh every time I hear it. I told Chris on Saturday at practice, like, my God, it's not that big of a difference in years. But I get the point. It makes me laugh every time. And I mean, the quote from Kenny, I think when Jimmy asked today, was he looked 28, like flat, hard stop. And I think that's going to be important for them to make any kind of extended run. You're going to need him the way he was tonight, where he's not necessarily the focus. And I think he doesn't make himself the focus by getting frustrated and by not being the main thing the other team is necessarily worried about. Like, obviously they're always going to worry about the core 4, but I think like Donovan today for so much of the afternoon was their focus. They couldn't really stop what he was doing. Then Ty goes off in the fourth quarter. By still taking advantage in those moments, Darius is going to have a really nice postseason.
It's crazy to me. It encapsulates how great Ty was, that this performance from Darius is essentially a footnote. But it shouldn't be, because I think it was really, really important for somebody like Darius. I think it was really important for the Cavs to see this version of Darius as well. Darius, if you look at his history, and I know like some of this isn't entirely fair and it needs context or whatever, but like the tough, physical, grimy, gritty defenders, those are the ones that have been problematic for Darius at times. And I know not everybody is Drew Holiday, or not everybody is Marcus Smart, or not everybody is Jalen Suggs, but stylistically, like there were some things that made you think, okay, maybe Miami can get under Darius's skin. Maybe Miami can punish him after switches. Maybe Miami can, get in, grab him, be physical, all that stuff off the ball, like not allow him to play with a level of freedom and stuff like that. He was great tonight. He was in control. He didn't force it. Even when he started off not so great shooting the ball, he didn't get rattled. He just stayed calm, composed. And that was a big boy performance from Darius. That was a mature basketball game that he played in every sense of the word. And I think there's a lot on him this year when you talk about this playoff run. And Kenny Atkinson kind of talked about it after the game, how teams are going to go at Darius. Teams are going to test Darius. Because sometimes when you look at the other defenders that he's going to be out there he could be considered the weakest link. And it doesn't mean that he's a bad defender. It just means the other 4 guys that he's sharing the floor with, like, that's not as advantageous for the opponent to attack those guys over and over and over again. So that's a big level of responsibility. That's a big mental thing for Darius. That's exhausting to have to play to that level defensively and then carry as much of the load offensively as he's probably going to have to carry at various points. And he was able to do both tonight. The way that he played defensively, the effort that he gave defensively, the energy that he expended defensively, it didn't take away from his offense. What he did offensively and all the responsibilities that he had there, it didn't take away from his defense. So that was a big boy performance from Darius, and it definitely should not be lost in this game, even though it kind of did get overshadowed by, Donovan's usual brilliance in game ones and Ty Jerome just going Steph Curry on the Miami Heat.
So I found it kind of fascinating that the idea that Kenny wants his 25-year-old point guard to play like a 28-year-old. I think every coach with a 25-year-old point guard wants that. But I found it fascinating that he was willing to say it in front of the cameras. That's why I asked Kenny today, like, how cognizant of you are you that when you're talking to us, you might be talking to one of your players? And he basically said, I'm the same with everybody. I'm pretty straight up. I appreciate the candor from him. But that's just like to again, not a novel concept to say, I want my 25-year-old point guard to play older. But like when we start talking about maturity, that's like a real personal, it can be perceived as like a real personal criticism to make, even if it's a constructive one, even if Kenny means it really well. And when I asked Darius about it at practice last week, I asked him how he thought he had handled that sort of thing so far this season. He threw his arms up and he said, wonderful. As if to say, like, enough already. All right, what are you getting at? And that to me suggested maybe not the first or the second, or the third or the fourth time that conversation has been approached. So I genuinely wondered, what's going to happen here? How's he going to handle this moment? And to Chris's point, like, it didn't start perfect. The Heat were going after him a lot with big bodies. Like, he got caught with Bam a couple times, actually kind of held his own, bodied up. And I thought he guided himself through this performance really nicely. And it felt like there were moments legit, like before the Ty Jerome one-man Cavalanche, I feel like there were real moments where like Darius was a steadying force out there for the Cavs. And his from a basketball standpoint, like, yeah, this kind of grimy team could be a team that might have thrown him off his game before. He's getting to the rim. He's finishing when his shots weren't falling. When his shots started falling, all the better. 2 turnovers. We had how many turnover conversations do we have about Darius Garland last year? And he's supposed to be this steady point guard type. And that's what he's been for most of his career. So like, part of me wonders, like, is this a maturity thing, or are we still like stuck on the broken jaw data set from a couple of years ago? And then 2 years ago, it was his first ever playoff series against one of the most physical teams in the NBA. There's a lot of noise here, and a lot of relevant context. But like, for Darius, this is a good tone setter for the rest of Darius's postseason. It's one game either way, but I just think that if he had come out here and not handled it the way he did and had a rough game, like that stuff, it's easier for that stuff to snowball than I think people realize. So this is a really, really encouraging sign for him.
The third most points that he's ever scored in a playoff game.
And the other 2 came in losses, right? One against Boston, one against New York, right? 30 and 32 points, I think it is. So I think it's extremely important that we continue to monitor Darius, but we've talked about that on this podcast at length. Like, it's Evan and Darius. They're under a microscope. How will they impact the Cavs winning? How far will the Cavs get? Those 2 guys are 2 of the biggest, if not the biggest, pieces that everybody will be watching to see in every different series that they get to, if they get there, of how they match up and how they're used. tonight was Darius Garland. I assure you that, as Jimmy mentioned, with Kenny Atkinson and Evan Mobley and getting started in the first quarter when he had 7 points, that's going to happen again. Continuing to try and get him involved and see how he fares against Bam Adebayo as this series progresses. And of course, we know that Miami today was their third game in, I think, 5 days because of the play-in tournament. So they were tired, right? And they had to adjust to that. And the Rocket Arena fans did not make it easy on them at all. But before we wrap up today's podcast, we do have a new segment that we have to keep up with throughout the playoffs, which is called Celtics Corner. And today, obviously, and I think even for the first round, it's going to be quick. Around the league, we got to see the Orlando Magic and the Boston Celtics played their game 1 on Sunday as well. The Boston Celtics came away with a 103-86 win over the Orlando Magic. Guys, I see this series going 4 games. I don't think this is a really competitive one when it comes to the scoring aspect. We've talked about this at length when it comes to Orlando being one of the worst scoring offenses in the league. Chris, when you look at Boston and how they performed tonight, what stands out and what do you take away from that series?
Remember what I was saying about the ominous signs for Miami, based on them shooting over their head and only scoring 100 points? Ominous sign for Orlando that Jason Tatum was trash. Jaylen Brown did not play well, and they still lost by double digits. Like, if there was a game for Orlando to steal, it was that one. That was the formula for them to potentially steal it. And they scored 86 points. 86? What? Like, I will start to take Orlando seriously when they can find a guard that can shoot. One. Like, that's it. But, like, until then, when you're a team that can't score consistently and you struggle just to get 100, like, nope, So, yeah, I mean, stylistically, they're the theoretical team that could test Boston because Paolo, because of Franz, because of Wendell Carter Jr., because of Jonathan Isaac, because of the length, because of the athleticism, because of the versatility, because of the switchability. Like, all of that certainly matters when you play against the Celtics in a 7-game series. All of that certainly theoretically helps you in that particular matchup. It's part of the reason why the Cavs went out and they brought in DeAndre Hunter, because that kind of player works against the Boston Celtics. So that's great that you have that group of personnel. It's great. But if you can't consistently score 100, like, you have no shot against the Celtics. The Celtics did not play well. Their offense did not look very Celtics-y. And part of that is because Orlando's got a really good defense, and they make it tough on a lot of teams. Just ask the Cavs. But the Celtics did not look very Celtics-y, and they had no issues with Orlando, and they won by double digits. And Derek White did his Ty Jerome impersonation.
Can I? And maybe this is not the best way to debut a segment. But, like, how much can we really learn about the Cavs Celtics matchup from watching these first round series? I'm being so serious. Like, the talent advantage is so overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like, again, I'll take Chris's point a step further. Franz and Paolo combined for 59 tonight. That's more than they outscored most of the Celtics. Like, Derek White and Peyton Pritchard had 49. Take them away, Franz and Paolo outscored the rest of the team, and they lost by 17. 17.
Yeah.
Again, Boston plays with their food. Orlando could have, they better have a better shooting couple of games from their role players. Maybe they could steal one. But I just feel like the story of both of these series are going to be Cavs, Celtics, really good. Heat, Magic, really flawed. And then maybe once we get to like the Knicks, if they can shake that out against Detroit, they looked a little shaky in game 1. And the Pacers / Bucks, depending on what happens with Dame and how the Bucks look when he comes back, maybe we could draw more conclusions there. And we're gonna talk about that. We can talk about how you like the Celtics getting bogged down. Orlando's pretty switchy. If the Cavs put out some of their switchier lineups and make Boston play more one-on-one, they're at their best when they're playing the beautiful game, drive, kick, drive, kick. If you get them bogged down, that's one way to slow down that offense. But again, like, these teams are both. It's going to be really hard for teams to poke holes in the Celtics and Cavs besides the Celtics and Cavs. That's kind of what I think.
Yeah, I was going to say I was watching that game before I left, and I obviously live very close to the stadium. I would estimate it takes me about 15 total minutes from the time I walk out my door till I'm set up in the media room at the arena. And by that point, it had been like back and forth, obviously, the first half. And it's like, what the heck is going on? And by the time I got set up in the media room, the Celtics were up double digits. Like, it takes me 15 total minutes. And the Celtics were up by double digits in that amount of time. And yeah, like to Jimmy's point, like I do think these two series are very similar. And that reminds me, I saw, I'm on Blue Sky. I don't know how many of you watching are on Blue Sky yet at this point. I'm on everything. I saw a Heat fan quote tweet my prediction story and say, when the Heat win this in 5, it's going to be so funny. And this whole conversation, to the point of it, I can't wait to quote tweet. It's not a quote tweet, to quote Sky, that person, when this series is wrapped up fairly quickly, because that seems to be the way it is trending. So just know I'm not a big comment reader. I typically don't, but Blue Sky, there's just so little interaction overall on there right now. I did see this comment, and I can never let anything go, ever.
That's the thing, right? Cleveland and Boston, they separated themselves so much from the other teams in the Eastern Conference. And it is, man, if you're playing against those teams, your margin for error is so small. JJ Redick earlier this year for the Lakers, he was talking about you basically have to play perfect basketball to beat the Cavs. Now, that's a little bit overblown, but the point remains. Games are 2 halves. Games are 48 minutes. Series are potentially 7 games, and now you got to win 4 times in 7 tries. Like, that's what's required to beat Boston. That's what's required to beat the Cavs. And think about how much you have to play sometimes above your head, and think about the consistency that you have to play to, and think about the margin for error that you have when playing against both of those teams just to win one game. Now you got to do it 4 times in 7 tries. So I'm sorry, like, neither one of these teams are capable of that. Very few teams in the NBA are capable of beating the Cavs, period. Very few teams in the NBA are capable of beating the Celtics, period. And then you start talking about how many teams exist that can do it 4 times in 7 tries? Yeah.
And I think we've given the Heat the respect they deserve too throughout all this. I think all of us have from reading our predictions. I think we basically all picked the Cavs in 5, right? And yeah. I think that's. Did you not pick them in 5? Okay, sorry. Well, I know Chris and I remember Chris and I did. We need a broom graphic. I remembered Chris and I did. And my rationale behind it is championship culture in South Beach, right? Eric Spoelstra is a tactician. They have a top 10 defense. Those things alone make it feasible that they could steal a game. I still don't think it's guaranteed. And I think it would be, to Chris's point, stealing a game, which is so different than stealing a series and beating them 4 out of 7 times.
To that point, and I think this is fascinating, and I debated this as I was going through my prediction post. As I was going through it, and I finished it, I realized that my reasoning for picking the Cavs in 5 as opposed to a sweep has absolutely nothing to do with this current Miami Heat basketball team. Not a single thing to do. It's all about their history. It's all about their reputation. It's all about the organization that they have built.
Defense, top 10 defense was part of the reasoning. I mean, all the other stuff, yes, but the top 10 defense thing is like the one thing we can say about this Miami team that you're like, that's why they like become the first 10 seed to make it out of the play-in, yada, yada, yada.
Like, what does Andrew Wiggins and Davion Mitchell have to do with Miami Heat culture?
Thank you. Too much respect. There's too much respect for this team.
2020, like Alec Burks is not the godfather of Heat culture.
Eric Spoelstra is a great coach. Pat Riley is literally the godfather. He's a legend. He's a legend in every sense of the word. But, like, where are all the champions? Kevin Love didn't play tonight. Andrew Wiggins is a champion who he had a great run, but all due respect, he's a champion because Steph Curry left Earth against Boston. He did it again tonight against Houston. Kenny Atkinson's talking about Bam as part of the championship culture. He's citing his FIBA resume. Come on, man. Citing someone's FIBA resume, that's like saying, and Bam's a great basketball player, but that's like the Warriors built a championship culture during the Steph, Kevin Durant years. I mean, I guess. Yeah. I guess they did. They already had built a championship culture. Then they stacked their team, which is what Team USA does in basically every competition. The guy who you're afraid of is Jimmy Butler, and he's gone.
Yeah.
That's what's happening here. We're acting like Jimmy's still there, or that I don't know. I love Bam Adebayo. I think Tyler Hero is pretty good. After that, this roster's kind of depressing to me. Kel'el Ware is going to be a good basketball player one day. I don't know that he's ready to play in the playoffs today. The trainer who was wearing Kel'el Ware's picture on his chest this morning, he had 2 fewer points than Kel'el Ware tonight.
I think that's a great point, and I think that's actually the best way we can end today's podcast. So, with all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs Insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. This is where you can send in all of your questions and join the Cavs community that we have created to have shout outs on the podcast, to get news and insight that doesn't readily go up on all other social media platforms, and even Ashley with Blue Sky. To do all of these things, sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around, because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, Jimmy, and Ashley. This isn't just our podcast. It's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.